Hello, I'm Lucas. This is a bit of lit, and I'd like to talk about Absalom by William Faulkner. This is just going to be not comprehensive, just a little bit of a review. If you want something comprehensive, I recommend, and I will leave a link to Codex Cantina's videos, their series on this book. They're doing a great job discussing the literary aspects of this and sort of historical, cultural aspects of it too, and all the good things about the book. And then, yeah, that's about it. I have a lot of issues with the composition of the book. I enjoy the non-traditional narrative with the different perspectives and, sort of jumping back and forth in time before, during, and after the Civil War. And I also, I really like the characters. I think that they're very well suited for this tragedy, and they all have their own motives. And I believe all the characters, but I do have some issues, and I will hopefully talk about them later. As far as Absalom goes, Absalom, of course, being a reference to the son of the king of Israel, David, that rebels, who is killed by a general of David, who wanted, his generals to, that's my son, take it easy. And it causes him great grief. Yeah. So, with that in mind, we already know this is going to be a tragedy, and very much so. This is reminiscent of a Greek tragedy, and I would say also a Shakespearean tragedy. These ideas are all intermixed. I don't think he's, we're not in ancient Greece. He wasn't in ancient Greece, so he's not going to write like an ancient Greek. He's got a whole bunch of other influences, like Shakespeare, of course. We're well familiar with the idea that Faulkner is the American Shakespeare. And I think we will find, or you will find if you read this book, or if you've read this book, that, with a Greek tragedy, I think the consensus is that gods or institutions or things in your life that are completely out of your control will affect you. And in terms of a character, they will, that is what will bring the drama and bring everything to a head at the climax. And in that case, in this book, we definitely have that. We have that with the Civil War in a way. We also have it with the institution of racism and the institution of slavery and oppression of Black people in America. So there's that, and we will see, and you will see, definitely how this affects everybody and causes harm to all of them, and it warps them and twists them. The way it affects the Black people, of course, is more evident because of racist practices or slavery in general. The way it affects the white characters is in its own way evident, but even if they are the beneficiaries of this, they are doing damage to themselves by either being complacent or by openly practicing. We also have the sort of Shakespearean tragedy that we will find in Thomas Sutpen, who is the main character. We find in all the characters too, to some respect, in which case their internal flaws, largely coming from the institutions that change them, shape their viewpoint. So let's talk about that. What we learn everything in the beginning. Just like a Greek tragedy, we've got some references to Agamemnon and to Cassandra, who is a woman that will always tell the truth, but no one will believe her, and who's our first character? A jaded, bitter woman, Rosa, who was the younger sister of Thomas Sutpen, that Thomas Sutpen's wife, sorry, not the younger sister of Thomas Sutpen, the younger sister of Ellen Coldfield, who married Thomas Sutpen. And no one really believes her because she's a jaded woman. She has this idea that there's something still at that house. And we get it from her perspective. We get it from Compson's perspective and his son, Quentin Compson. And we get Shreve too. And we have Rosa, of course. And I think that's just 4. I mean, in a way, you could say there's like the omniscient narrator at times, or maybe the town, which could be the chorus. Thomas Sutpen comes to Mississippi with a whole bunch of slaves, a French architect. He sort of drains the swamp, he buys this land from these natives, and builds a plantation, because as a young man, he saw a black servant. He was very poor. So he decided, I want to be a patriarch, you know, have a lineage and make something of myself. So he does. And he takes his money to Mississippi to build a plantation. And he sort of comes and goes over the years. And eventually he joins the church to find a wife. And that would be Ellen Coldfield. And they have 2 kids, Henry and Judith. But as we have talked about, this is a tragedy, so they're all doomed. Sorry, but you learn it in the first chapter, so that's all I can say. Now, they're all doomed, I guess, because of the, institution of slavery and how that is going to warp them as white characters. And the town around them, because the town changes because of Thomas Sutpen introducing all these slaves. The town is complacent. They are a little jittery about it, but well, and eventually it just becomes normal. And we will definitely see how that will affect them. Now, to make matters worse, to add to the sort of Shakespearean side of the tragedy, and the internal flaws of the character, Thomas Sutpen, where did he get that money? Well, he went to the West Indies, and he worked there. And while he was there, he made his money, and he also met a woman that he married and had a child with, Charles Bond. Now, with Charles Bond, he's a very important character. He's his son. With a patriarch wanting to have a child, they would want to have a son. But he finds out that his wife, and therefore his child, are not fully white. They have a little bit of black blood in them. And even though they look white just like him, he can't get past his own prejudices, and he abandons them. Now, when Charles re-enters the story, re-enters his family, re-enters his life, everything, which was already starting to quake, shake, and crumble, comes to the comes to a head, and everything starts to fall apart. And it just gets worse and worse and worse, and the truths revealed about the racism and prejudice and oppression of the South, and the guilt and the shame of everything. It reveals some really ugly truths as you open the onion and see all the layers. And the tragedy, as far as all that goes, I have left out a tremendous amount, and I hope I gave a fairly accurate idea of what you're going for. I did leave so much out. All of that stuff I really enjoy. What I don't like is the way that it's written. There's like never any paragraph breaks ever, and these sentences just go on forever. And it's just really obnoxious to read. I can live with that, but there's a certain point. The first 3 chapters I was like okay with. There's 9 chapters, and the last 3 chapters were much better. But in the middle, especially chapter 6, which drove me to, I almost quit reading because of chapter 6. Because we start following Quentin and Shreve, who are college roommates, and Shreve wants to know, I hope I'm saying his name right, Shreve wants to know all about the South because he's Canadian, and he wants to hear more about this family, because it's just like wild, to say the least. Where was it going? Oh, yeah, all of the sort of ideas and the references and everything come to a head in this chapter, which also has one of the longest sentences in, if not the longest to this day, in literature. It's like well over 1,000 words, and it's not even a complete sentence, and it's in italics, and it's just, it drives me insane, because it's got all these references jam-packed in together. And in my opinion, this point, and you know, throughout too, but especially in chapter 6, it is William Faulkner showing off, look how brilliant I am, and if you don't understand, you just aren't worth my time. You're just not smart enough. So, yeah, that's just, and after that, I sort of realized, oh, that's kind of how the rest of the book is. He wrote this to be unreadable unless you're an intellectual like him. That's just a feeling I got. Especially chapter 6 just opened up that can of worms for me, opened up that onion. Another thing that I thought was a little too convenient, I believed Thomas had been leaving his wife and Charles, but it seemed a little too convenient to me that Charles and Henry would meet up, because that's where Charles is reintroduced to this family. And, you know, just things become devastating at that point. I thought that was a little too convenient, and I thought it really, a lot of this revolves around, okay, the failures of Thomas, and, you know, this whole convenient meeting at college. You know, maybe it's not that convenient. Maybe I did miss a line or two that would explain exactly. I mean, I don't know. I just thought, of all the places for Charles to go, he happens to go to the same place as Henry. Not impossible, but it's not like that college was the only place, you know? It felt like it was done that way just so that this story could happen the way it does. So that was a weakness, in my opinion. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation, and I just missed it in the 1,000-word sentences that go nowhere. I mean, they reveal a lot, but go nowhere. And yeah, all the paragraphs that never end. It's hard to tell. I did read it pretty fast. I read it much slower than I normally read. Normally I can read a page, I don't know, definitely in less than a minute. I don't know how fast, but I was like 2-3 minutes a page just to parse through everything, and I don't know why he was at that college other than to make the story happen. And I think that really brings it down for me. and the arrogance of the whole thing. That's all I've got to say. If you know why, let me know, because I might have missed it, and it's my first reading, so of course I missed a whole bunch of stuff. I don't think I'll ever read it again, but I am looking forward to reading more William Faulkner, at the very least to fill out my reading of the literary canon. So yeah, there's that. Let me know what I missed, or if I made any mistakes in retelling the story. Maybe I did misunderstand things. So yeah, there's that. Thank you. This has gone on long enough. Goodbye.